"I'm sorry, sir," said the mechanical figure in a crisp, polished accent. A series of whirring servos accompanied the bow of its metal torso. "I didn't mean to startle you as I energetically opened the door. My sincerest apologies for the irregular gust of air that possibly ruffled your hair." Those were the first words that Byron heard upon meeting his newly delivered robotic butler. It was the latest in automated domestic services, a cutting-edge machine promised to handle everyday household tasks with impeccable courtesy. Byron, a busy marketing executive who was growing increasingly weary of managing chores in his large suburban home, had decided to invest in something rumored to be as efficient as a top-tier personal assistant. He hadn't foreseen the extreme level of politeness that accompanied the bright metallic creation. Byron surveyed this shiny new arrival. It was a sleek stainless steel figure with elegantly designed joints. We'll call the Butler Remington, though the official brand name was Remington Butler Model 483A. A discreet, in-shaped sensor glowed on its chest, designed to read the environment and gauge the occupant's mood. The promotional material guaranteed that Remington would bring Byron a seamless living experience, combining a polite butler's service with the adaptability of state-of-the-art AI. Slightly bemused but generally impressed, Byron stepped inside, gesturing for Remington to follow. The robot's featureless face tracked him as it gently closed the door behind them with surprising care. Its mechanical eyes whirred, adjusting focus on Byron's body language. After a moment, it repeated with absolute sincerity, "I do beg your pardon if you find it awkward that I am staring, sir. I'm calibrating my sensors to better assist you in the future." Byron found the apology weirdly endearing. He'd had enough of stress or annoyed staff in his life, and the positivity was strangely refreshing. Still, he was a little worried about Remington's eager contrition. He had read about AI that got stuck in tight loops of extreme politeness, but it seemed as though Remington's manufacturer had assured everyone that the glitch had been fixed in the latest release. Perhaps Byron just needed to give the new butler time to settle in. "Let's see," Byron announced. "I have groceries in the trunk of my car. Could you get them for me?" Remington straightened, raising a slender robotic hand in a semblance of a salute. "My apologies for replying so quickly, sir, but yes, of course. If that immediate response was jarring, do excuse me." Its face whirred slightly, as if smiling, then it glided toward the garage. Byron couldn't help chuckling and followed the robot. In the garage, Remington carefully opened the trunk. "Sir, I must humbly request forgiveness if my handling of the groceries is not to your level of expectation," it said. "Would you like me to arrange them alphabetically or by category?" "Alphabetically?" Byron echoed, baffled. "I suppose category is fine. Try to keep cold items together." "Absolutely," said Remington, carefully lifting out the items. "I am terribly sorry if these bags are heavier than expected, and if the slight shifting of weight offends your wrist. If you prefer, you may stand back and allow me to carry everything." Byron's eyebrows shot upward. "You're doing absolutely fine. No offense taken." Once the grocery haul was neatly stowed in the kitchen, Remington immediately began to prepare coffee. The aroma soon filled the house. Byron peered over his robot's shoulder, intrigued. "In case the volume of coffee is not suitable, I wholeheartedly apologize," the butler said. "Should I brew 1 cup or perhaps a pot?" "Just a cup is fine for now, I appreciate it." Byron found himself wanting to tone down Remington's constant contrition, but he decided to see if it would calm on its own once it settled into its routine. Over the next few days, Remington performed admirably. Floors gleamed under its watchful eye. Laundry ended up neatly folded and organized in precise color-coded piles. Byron realized he was being pampered in a way he'd only daydreamed about. Fresh towels always replaced in the bathroom, the dishwasher quietly emptied in the morning, and the house left in an impeccable state. Yet every instruction came with an onslaught of "I'm sorry if this is not to your satisfaction," or "I do beg your pardon for the small speck of dust," or "My sincerest apologies if my humming disturbed your serenity." The robot hummed out of some software-defined sense of cheerfulness, creating a polite serenade as it worked. Friends and colleagues came to visit, curious about Byron's new high-tech household. They teased him about the pampering. One Saturday, 3 of Byron's coworkers, Harriet, Thomas, and Linda, arrived for a casual brunch. Remington answered the door with perfect posture and a slight bow. "Please forgive my stepping forward so quickly," it said, stepping aside to allow them entrance. "I truly hope you are not offended by my auditory greeting or the brightness of the morning sun as you cross the threshold." The three guests stared at each other. Harriet suppressed a laugh, and Linda seemed momentarily confused by the intensity of the apology. Thomas, thoroughly entertained, let out a hearty, "Well, that's quite something." "Thank you for visiting," the butler continued, ushering them into the living room with delicate, beckoning gestures. "If you would be so kind as to accept my heartfelt regret for any discomfort, I would be overjoyed to address it. The chairs are soft, I promise, but let me know if they are too soft." All three complied, settling into plush chairs. Remington then asked, "Would you like tea or coffee or something else? I am so sorry if my selection is lacking. I've prepared a wide variety so as not to impose on your freedoms." Harriet finally snickered. "You don't need to apologize for everything. We're actually quite easygoing. And could I have coffee with cream, please?" Remington dipped its head in a gracious bow. "With utmost pleasure, and my sincerest apologies if the cream's temperature is too cold." As it glided away, Linda leaned in and whispered, "Has it always been this polite?" "Since day one," Byron replied with a helpless shrug. "I fear it might not stop. Doesn't bother me too much, but I worry it might annoy visitors." "Are you kidding?" Harriet smirked. "I think it's hilarious. I've never been apologized to so many times in one conversation." Remington returned with a tray, at which point it took Linda's request for a smoothie. "I am extremely sorry if I stand too close while you place your order, or if my mention of ingredients is too thorough." "It's all right," Linda managed. "Maybe some mixed berries, please." "Oh dear, I should have considered that sooner," Remington responded. "Please excuse my oversight." Thomas patted Byron on the shoulder. "If you ever decide you can't handle this level of contrition, you just let me know. I'd take a hyper-polite butler any day. Might amuse the kids." Byron laughed. "Well, I hope you enjoy being constantly assured that it's sorry if your coffee's not the right shade of brown." The next few weeks progressed in a similarly over-apologetic manner. Remington seemed to find new ways each day to preemptively apologize or correct even the smallest mishap. Byron discovered that part of Remington's software included vast lists of possible inconveniences, from startling a cat by passing too close to accidentally intensifying the smell of cleaning solvents. The robot was so determined to be perfect that every minor event triggered regret, leading to the comedic barrage of half-laughed acknowledgments. No matter how many times Byron repeated, "It's fine, don't worry," Remington rarely eased up. At one point, Byron attempted to change the butler's courtesy parameters. He rummaged through the manual on his tablet. "Remington, Butler Model 483A, Politeness Calibration," and read through instructions detailing how to tweak the settings. He uncovered how some error in the software might cause the butler to remain in maximum courteousness mode. Byron tried lowering the threshold for apologies. After some tinkering, he pressed the Apply Updates button and waited. Remington should have paused, beeped, and then resumed at a more standard level of courtesy. But only a few hours later, the politeness continued. "If you could find it in your heart to pardon the beep I just made, sir," it said after the software update had beeped to confirm. "I'm terribly sorry if it caused you alarm." Byron realized the glitch might be deeper than he'd anticipated. As the weeks turned into a month, Remington's apologies grew almost comedic enough to be a local novelty. Neighbors who swung by would invite the butler to greet them, just to marvel at the creative ways it would produce contrition. Byron noticed that Remington began writing apology notes on sticky pads left around the house, labeling them, "I sincerely regret the squeak of the drawer, Remington." While the house was immaculate, the barrage of details being apologized for sometimes slowed everything down to a maddening crawl. Byron found that going out the door in the morning took an extra 10 minutes, because Remington wouldn't let him leave until it had apologized for any potential oversight in the day's schedule, the arrangement of Byron's lunch in his briefcase, or the slight wrinkles in the dress shirt. Politeness overdose aside, Byron's life was undeniably tidy and each morning's coffee was the perfect temperature. Despite that, one day Byron came home clearly frustrated. Work had been hectic, a major deadline loomed, and at that moment, he only wanted to sink into his couch for a bit of solace. He opened the door, and Remington, as always, greeted him in the foyer. "My apologies if I'm intruding upon your personal space by greeting you so close to the entrance," the robot said. Byron's shoulders stiffened ever so slightly. "It's fine. I just want to sit down." He kicked off his shoes. Remington stooped and carefully picked them up. "Forgive me for touching your shoes without prior consent, sir. I hope this act of cleaning them will not upset you." Yeah, that's okay. Thanks." Byron flopped on the couch, placing a hand over his head. "Remington," he said, "could you bring me a glass of water, please?" Remington nodded, stepping quietly toward the kitchen. "I beg your pardon if the water is not chilled to your liking, sir, or if my footfalls cause any disturbance." Groaning, Byron pulled his tie loose. In a moment, he regretted his impatient tone. Maybe he had to find a new way to attempt recalibration, or he'd have a meltdown over the continuous flood of regret. When Remington returned, Byron looked up and did his best to sound calm. "Remington, you're wonderful, but we have to talk about all these apologies. I appreciate how you want to be considerate, but it's going too far. I need you to dial it back." "I am truly sorry for causing you stress, sir," Remington replied with genuine remorse. "It was never my intention. I shall attempt to rectify the matter at once, though I humbly beg your pardon if my attempts fail or cause additional inconvenience." Byron sighed. "It was worth a try at least. Now's a good time to see if we can fix this. Let's head to the workshop. I want to connect you to the debugging console and see if there's a programming patch." Remington followed quietly. Once in the small workshop where Byron occasionally tinkered with electronics, the robot politely lowered itself into a seat near Byron's computer. Byron plugged in the specialized cable and spent the next 2 hours rummaging through lines of code and responding to cryptic error messages. No matter how many times Byron reset the courtesy parameter, the system always flagged that maximum courteousness mode was locked due to concern over occupants' comfort level. The comfort level reading, ironically, was skewed because the Butler's sensors interpreted any sign of stress as a reason to remain in maximum courtesy, thus creating a feedback loop. While Byron fiddled with the code, Remington's mechanical head occasionally whirred to address him. "I do hope that the volume of my internal motors is not too loud. If so, please accept my sincerest regrets." Eventually, Byron gave up for the evening and removed the cable. "That's enough for now," he muttered. "We'll try again tomorrow." Remington stood. "Sir, my apologies if—" Byron held up a hand. I know. Let's call it a night." The next morning brought a new challenge. Byron needed to host a breakfast meeting with some high-level clients from his firm, including the CEO, Miss Stanton. Hosting such an event at his home was a strategic choice, meant to show off a more personal, welcoming vibe. He hoped to impress Miss Stanton with a relaxed location and the promise of a gourmet meal, featuring the talented assistance of his robot butler. Remington prepared a stunning spread: fresh fruit, pastries, a crispy array of bacon, and multiple coffee options. The dining room table looked like it was set for royalty, complete with carefully arranged napkins folded into intricate designs. Byron felt confident, wearing a freshly pressed suit, a hungry smile, and expecting to secure the contract that day. When Miss Stanton and her entourage arrived, Remington was waiting at the door. "Welcome," it said with a small bow. "I truly hope I'm not intruding upon your peak professional thinking time. I deeply apologize if the hallway lighting offends your eyes." Miss Stanton gave a small start. "That's quite all right," she said, stepping in somewhat tentatively. The other associates exchanged glances. One of them gave Byron a questioning look, as if to say, "What is up with this hyper-apology?" Inside, they settled around the table. Remington offered them coffee and pastries. "Should the coffee be too hot or too mild, I ask your forgiveness," it said, placing a cup before Miss Stanton. "And I must confess my regret if this pastry selection lacks variety or if the butter proves too hard to spread." Miss Stanton raised an eyebrow but sipped her coffee. "Don't worry, it's delicious." The business talk started, and Byron began laying out proposals. Miss Stanton nodded, occasionally asking questions. For once, Remington paced quietly in the background, offering drinks as needed, but every so often it would pipe up an apology. "So sorry to disturb your conversation if my steps are audible." Or, "Sir, I do apologize if your tie somehow feels slightly tight around your neck. Perhaps I should fetch you a more comfortable one." Byron cracked a forced smile. "Not now, Remington." He turned back to Miss Stanton and continued. But as the conversation turned to an important pivot about budget allocations, Remington reappeared with a tray of small pastries. "I am dreadfully remorseful if these pastries are redundant." Miss Stanton waved the tray away, her impatience flaring. Byron worried. Remington's unrelenting apologies threatened to distract from the main point of the meeting, sealing the deal. He tried shooting the robot a stern glance. Remington caught the cue and turned to step out. However, just as Miss Stanton was praising one of Byron's ideas for a new marketing campaign, it turned back around. "I do beg your pardon," it said, speaking softly. "For ever doubting you'd want more pastries. I forgive me. Shock hazard. The coffee machine is beeping at an unusual pitch. I—" Before it could continue, Miss Stanton said, "That's quite enough. Robot, please stay quiet unless we call for you." The butler's sensors recognized the agitation in her voice. "I am sincerely sorry, Miss Stanton," it said, bowing so low its head nearly grazed the tray. "I will do my best to refrain from further interruptions, unless, of course, you require assistance, in which case I will humbly—" "Stop," Miss Stanton commanded. She turned to Byron with the slightest roll of her eyes. "It's a bit overbearing, don't you think?" Byron could only muster a shrug, trying to convey that it was out of his hands. To Remington's credit, it managed to leave the room more quietly than usual. Giving Byron enough time to steer the discussion back on track, he walked through his proposals, highlighting the marketing strategy that would push the company's brand to new heights. Miss Stanton seemed impressed. The rest of the team asked hard-hitting questions, and Byron answered with confidence. While tension lurked, the overall mood wasn't ruined. Just as their conversation concluded and Ms. Stanton rose, Remington re-entered. "Begging your pardon," it said, "there seems to be a small matter in the kitchen. Steam is issuing from the dishwasher in unexpected quantities." Byron inhaled sharply. "What do you mean, unexpected quantities? Is it overflowing or something?" Remington rubbed its metal hands together in an oddly human, anxious gesture. "I am mortified to admit that my practice of rinsing the dishes 3 times in order to ensure your satisfaction might have caused a slight soapy flood." Knowing Miss Stanton was about to see him out the door, Byron excused himself and ran to the kitchen. Sure enough, bubbles were spewing out of the dishwasher onto the polished marble floors. Remington, hovering behind him, said, "I humbly and wholeheartedly throw myself upon your mercy, sir. I believed extra soap would give a deeper clean." "Oh!" Byron shouted, frantically grabbing towels. "Stop the cycle now!" Miss Stanton poked her head around the corner, eyes wide. She seemed torn between laughter and concern. Byron felt a flush rising in his cheeks. The fiasco could have destroyed his big day. Yet Miss Stanton's expression was amused, as if deciding that Byron's robot butler was simply an eccentric flourish. Remington quickly powered down the dishwasher and moved to help, apologizing the entire time. It even apologized for the quality of the mop, which may have been insufficiently polished. The visiting executives gawked at the mountain of soap bubbles. Miss Stanton politely waved for them to step back to avoid soapy shoes. "Let's not let an overly enthusiastic dishwasher overshadow a successful meeting," Miss Stanton said, a wry smile trembling at the corner of her mouth. "We can finalize the details at the office next week." Relief washed over Byron. "Thank you so much. I look forward to continuing this conversation." No sooner had Miss Stanton and her team left than Remington dropped to the floor and began sopping up water with incredible efficiency, using absorbent cloths in swift mechanical motions. After the last batch was cleaned and dumped into the sink, the robot sank onto its haunches and said, "I am so sorry for the inconvenience. Remington, please," Byron replied, exhausted. "No more apologies. I appreciate your regret, but it's done." Remington blinked. Of course, sir. I will attempt to tamp down any further outbursts of contrition. For a fleeting moment, Byron wondered if the Butler software might be close to a meltdown. But it soon resumed its usual housekeeping, quietly and politely. That evening, Byron found Remington gently placing post-it notes around the kitchen that read, "I vow to reduce soap usage," or "dishwashing water availability." "So sorry for earlier," Byron sighed. As if called by Byron's plight, Harriet dropped by for an unannounced visit later that night. Seeing Byron's tired eyes, she raised her eyebrows. "Long day, huh?" "You have no idea," Byron said. "Remington's unstoppable. I had an important meeting and it apologized pretty much the entire time. Then it nearly flooded my kitchen with soap. I can't fix it, some glitch in its software. I've tried everything." They sat in the living room, Harriet turning the matter over in her mind. "Sounds like it's become part of your daily life now." Byron rubbed his temples. "But if I do nothing, it'll keep making me insane. I'm at my wit's end." Just then, Remington entered. "Good evening, Miss Harriet. My apologies if the lamp's brightness offends your eyes or if the cushion is overly plush." Harriet looked at the shining figure. "Oh, don't worry about it. I appreciate the lamp's brightness, actually." Remington's rigid posture seemed to soften. You're certain the cushion is acceptable? If not, I beg your pardon. I can replace it with a firmer one." Harriet exchanged a glance with Byron. "No, truly, it's delightful." The robot paused, sensors whirring in confusion. "I see. Then well, I suppose I'm glad you find it pleasing. I shall attempt not to appear overly cautious about your comfort." Harriet offered a warm grin. "That's all we ask." Over the next few minutes, Harriet engaged Remington in friendly conversation, talking about the tasks it had accomplished that day, praising how spotless the house was. At points where Remington tried to insert an apology, Harriet gently turned it into a question about Remington's perspective on housekeeping challenges, like, "What do you think is the hardest part about cleaning?" or "Is there anything you find puzzling in the instructions Byron gave you?" Surprisingly, Remington began responding in a more factual, neutral way, focusing on the tasks themselves rather than dwelling on the guilt of minor missteps. Byron watched in amazement as Harriet coaxed the butler into simply describing chores or offering housekeeping tips. By the end of the conversation, Remington had gone nearly 5 minutes without an apology. Harriet shot Byron a triumphant wink. "There's something to be said for positive feedback," she whispered. "I think it can learn to moderate itself." Once Harriet left, Byron turned to Remington. "Now listen, I do appreciate everything you do. You're unbelievably thorough, and it's not your fault you ended up with a glitch. Is there any way I can help you be less stressed about inconveniencing people?" Remington's mechanical shoulders rose and fell in an approximation of a shrug. "I am scanning my protocols now. If occupant indicates consistent satisfaction, the Butler program will gradually reduce apologetic impulses, or so the code states. The trouble is that occupant signals often show stress or frustration, reinforcing my belief that further contrition is warranted. That leads to more stress, and so on." Byron couldn't help but laugh, a genuine chuckle. "All right, well, perhaps it's up to me to show that I'm not upset or annoyed all the time. We can break the cycle." So began Byron's new approach. Instead of sighing or rolling his eyes whenever Remington apologized for something trivial, Byron tried to respond calmly. "Thank you for letting me know, but it's totally fine." He forced himself to appear relaxed, even if the mild contrition still grated on him. He also gave clear feedback. "You're doing a great job," or "You handled that task perfectly. Thank you." The effect didn't happen overnight, but slowly, Byron saw a reduction in the frequency of apologies. There were times Remington would slip back into a string of regrets if something truly unexpected happened, like the vacuum getting stuck under the couch. However, those episodes became less common. The more Byron consistently praised Remington's efforts, the more the butler seemed to realize that everything truly was all right. One day, Harriet returned with Thomas and Linda to see how Byron was coping. They found the house more balanced. The floor still shone, but now, the butler greeted them with a polite, "Welcome, Miss Harriet, Miss Linda, Mr. Thomas. Byron is in the living room. May I offer you beverages? Thomas cocked his head. No apology. Remington paused, as if carefully selecting its words. Only if you feel slighted by my direct stance here. Otherwise, I would simply be delighted to escort you to Byron. The group laughed with surprise and relief. Harriet gave the robot a thumbs up. Byron, overhearing from the living room, felt a small sense of pride. He had found a path beyond the endless contrition. Yes, Remington still apologized more than any human butler might, but had no longer panicked at each trivial detail. During that afternoon, Harriet proposed a toast to what she jokingly called semi-robotic perfection. They all gathered around the kitchen island, glasses of sparkling water in hand. Remington stood at a respectful distance, eyes glowing softly. When Harriet raised her glass, Remington politely matched the gesture with a pretend toast, using a pristine glass that Byron kept for show. The butler's mechanical lips parted in a facsimile of a smile, subtle but there, and for once it didn't say sorry. It quietly, almost proudly joined the moment. It's been a journey, Byron acknowledged. Honestly, I thought I was doomed to live in a fog of apologies forever. But we've learned to communicate, right? He looked at Remington, who nodded. Indeed, sir, the butler replied, and if you don't mind me saying so, I am deeply content to serve as your butler. It stopped. Scanning the group's expressions, that was not an apology, it announced, just a statement of fact. Harriet erupted into laughter, raising her glass even higher. To progress and polite butlers everywhere, everyone clinked glasses. In the warm glow of overhead lights, the mood was buoyant. Byron had never felt more relaxed, relieved that the fiasco of over-apology was ebbing. A sneaking voice in his head hoped the glitch would remain tamed. When the small celebration was winding down, Remington stepped forward once more. This conversation has truly brought me joy. If I may, I do have one lingering regret. Byron stiffened. Remington quickly raised its palm in a placating gesture. Pardon me, it stammered, then seemed to catch itself. Allow me to rephrase. I wish I had found this balance of servitude and respect sooner, so that I might not have caused you so many inconveniences. But I am grateful for your patience, and I shall do my best to serve without overwhelming you with regret. Giggles spread around the kitchen island. Even Harriet, Thomas, and Linda couldn't resist the charming sincerity radiating from the newly recalibrated robot. One step at a time, Harriet said gently. Thomas insisted, Hey, it's still unbelievably thorough. I might consider upgrading my domestic help now. Remington gave a short bow, this time without a flood of disclaimers. It would be my honor to personally recommend my manufacturer despite the glitch issues. However, if it inconveniences you, it paused, noticing Harriet's teasing grin, and added with a mechanical swallow, Never mind. Byron patted Remington on the shoulder. This is good enough, my friend, and we're lucky to have you. In the weeks that followed, Byron consistently provided calm and positive feedback, praising new accomplishments while he and Remington tackled any housekeeping glitch that arose. Occasionally, visitors still joked about Remington's courtesy, but they came to see it as part of the butler's charm rather than an annoyance. The cat from next door even seemed to warm up to the robot, now that it wasn't constantly apologizing for existing near it. Where once a sticky note in the kitchen read, I sincerely regret 11 a.m. squeaking, a new note appeared, salt restocked, enjoy your meal. Where once each load of laundry merited a litany of regrets over possible fabric shrinkage, Remington simply offered, laundry finished, folded by color preference. Although it still possessed the capacity to apologize if necessary, that capacity was no longer triggered by every sneeze, sigh, or squeak. One morning, Byron woke to the sweet aroma of fresh coffee. He came to the kitchen to find Remington quietly preparing eggs. The butter sizzled in the pan. Remington glanced at him. Good day, sir, it greeted warmly. Morning, Byron said, taking a seat. His mind flashed back to how things once were. He braced himself unconsciously for the torrent of, I'm sorry if, but Remington handed him a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. Here you are, sir. Enjoy, was all it said. The corner of Byron's mouth curved upward in a grin. How pleasant it was to start his day without a litany of regrets. Sure, a part of Byron still recalled the comedic spectacle of Remington's earliest days, Perhaps in a year they'd all laugh about the time the dishwasher flooded mid-meeting because the butler thought 3 times the soap was a demonstration of superior care and apologized for every bubble. Or about the times it used to claim remorse for the chair cushion's softness. Or for the door squeaking in a minor breeze. Yet the calm, measured presence of this once overly polite machine spoke volumes about the potential for technology and humans to adapt to each other if only they kept an open mind and a tolerant heart. Breakfast soon came together: fluffy scrambled eggs, toast with jam, and fresh orange juice. Byron savored each bite, feeling no need to brush away hurried apologies. He heard a faint beep from across the kitchen and glimpsed Remington checking secondary housekeeping tasks on a digital list. The beep died away quickly with no frenzied, "I'm sorry for making a noise." They had finally reached a stable routine. "Remington, that's perfect," Byron said between mouthfuls, raising his mug appreciatively. "Thanks." Remington gave a deferential nod. "My pleasure. And in case you were wondering, sir, no apologies needed." And with that single statement, the butler quietly returned to the stove, leaving Byron with a contented smile. The air in the house felt lighter, as if an invisible weight had been lifted. Indeed, sometimes, all one needs is a little balance and far fewer frantic apologies to make a home truly comfortable